Thank you. We're here for a press conference with Minister Marc Miller this morning. When we move to the question period, we'll start with questions in the room, and if time allows, we'll then move to the Zoom meeting as well. Alors, on va commencer dans la salle quand nous allons aux périodes de questions, et si nous avons le temps, nous allons au Zoom. If you're on the Zoom and you have a question, just please raise your hand when it gets to that time. Thanks, and we'll start.
Thank you. Good day. Bonjour. I want to start by acknowledging that we are on the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Je tiens également à saluer la présence ancienne et continue de peuples autochtones sur ce territoire et leur rôle de gardiens dans le passé, le présent et l'avenir. Le Canada et le Mexique sont des amis proches et des partenaires commerciaux de confiance depuis de nombreuses décennies. The lifting of the visa requirement for Mexican nationals in December of 2016 helped solidify our valued relationship. It helped boost business ties. It helped improve trade and investment. We count Mexican citizens as friends and family, a key workforce that helps Canadians and students and visitors, that help boost our economy and enrich our culture. Our relationship is better and fundamentally different than it was in 2015. Pour continuer à bénéficier de ces échanges positifs de voyageurs, d'étudiants et de travailleurs, le Canada doit maintenir un système d'immigration efficace. While the majority of Mexican travelers arriving in Canada to work, visit family, travel, or study, we have faced a rising number of asylum claims from the region. In 2023 alone, asylum claims from Mexican citizens accounted for 17% of all claims made that year from all nationalities around the world. Most asylum claims from Mexico are either rejected by the Immigration Refugee Board of Canada or withdrawn or abandoned by the applicant, and so a change was needed. Ce que nous recherchons, c'est un équilibre dans la circulation des personnes entre nos deux grands pays et les demandes adressées au système d'immigration et aux ressources publiques du Canada. I want to stress that this isn't a single country issue and that IRCC is continuously monitoring the impacts of its visa policies for both visa-exempt or visa-required countries, as well as asylum claim trends. Any adjustment to Canada's travel requirements are made to preserve the integrity and sustainability of our asylum and immigration system. The integrity of our immigration system is a top priority for us. Canada's visa policy decisions are made in an effort to support travel and people-to-people connections while maintaining a safe and orderly migration system. C'est pourquoi, après mûre réflexion et de nombreuses consultations, le Canada modifie ses conditions de voyage pour les citoyens mexicains. As of today, at 11:30 p.m. Eastern, Mexican citizens will need a visa to come to Canada or obtain a valid electronic travel authorization if they hold a valid U.S. non-immigrant visa, or have held a Canadian visa in the past 10 years and are traveling by air on a Mexican passport. Desde hoy a las 11:30 de la noche, los ciudadanos mexicanos deberán solicitar visa para entrar a Canadá u obtener una autorización electrónica de viaje si cuentan con una visa americana de no inmigrante válida o han tenido una visa canadiense en los últimos 10 años y están viajando por vía aérea con pasaporte mexicano. Mexican citizens who meet these conditions will be able to apply an ETA for an ETA instead of a visa to fly to Canada. We're enhancing and strengthening the electronic travel authorization program while ensuring Mexican citizens can still enjoy coming to Canada to work, to visit, or study. With the high number of our Mexican clientele currently holding U.S. visas, those that do will continue to be able to fly to Canada without a visa. The majority of Mexican citizens then will still be able to travel using an ETA. Ces nouvelles exigences permettront au Canada de maintenir les voyages importants pour soutenir les travailleurs et les étudiants qui viennent au Canada et aux entreprises de pouvoir mener leurs activités commerciales comme il se doit. This also means that Mexican passport holders will have their existing ETAs canceled. They will need to apply for a visa or reapply for an ETA if they meet the new requirements of today. This will not apply to those who hold a valid work permit or study permit for Canada. They'll be able to continue to travel with their existing ETAs until it expires, as long as they're traveling by air, of course. We will also be expanding the visa application centers in Mexico to better serve clients who may now require a visa to come to our country. And for more information, we have IRCC web pages in English, French, and in Spanish, of course. La procédure de demande de permis de travail ou d'études pour les citoyens mexicains ne changera pas. Les Mexicains qui souhaitent travailler au Canada continueront d'avoir accès à un grand nombre de voies d'accès à l'emploi existantes, notamment le programme des travailleurs étrangers temporaires et le programme de mobilité internationale. For example, the seasonal agricultural work program is a vital example of the mutually beneficial circular migration that we seek to promote regionally and globally. Canada is ready to work with Mexico to build on this program through the modernization of our new SOPs, SAWP bilateral agreements to offer Mexican workers new opportunities through the incorporation of year-round primary agricultural fish, seafood, and food processing in the program. This will benefit workers and businesses on both sides of the Canada-Mexico relationship. Depuis que ce dernier a été signé il y a 50 ans entre nos deux pays, il reflète l'amitié et le partenariat qui caractérisent les relations entre le Canada et le Mexique. Il s'agit d'un exemple essentiel de la migration circulaire mutuellement bénéfique que nous cherchons à promouvoir à l'échelle régionale et mondiale. All of us share a strong interest in our ongoing close partnership with Mexico, safe and orderly migration, refugee protection and border protection. Je vais être clair. En tant que gouvernement, nous attachons une grande importance à nos liens étroits avec le Mexique. Les nouvelles exigences en matière de voyage n'y changent rien. Le Mexique est et restera un partenaire important pour le Canada. Thank you. Merci. Impatient de prendre vos questions.
Thanks. We'll move to our question period starting in the room. Please ask one question and one follow-up. We do have a lot of people today, so if we can try to move as quickly as we can, both in your questions and in your answers, Minister, so we can get through as many people as possible, including people over Zoom. We'll do that. So why don't we start with Ray Filion from TVA.
Le gouvernement mexicain est mécontent. Est-ce que ça risque d'avoir des conséquences économiques néfastes pour le Canada, ce que vous annoncez aujourd'hui?
Ben, d'abord, avant tout, c'est pas une annonce commerciale que je fais aujourd'hui, Raymond. Le Mexique, comme pays souverain, a droit à prendre les mesures qu'il lui plaît. Ceci étant dit, je n'ai pas eu indication, mis à part évidemment le fait que je confirme qu'ils ne sont pas contents, le fait qu'ils réfléchissent à la réaction, à ce qui devrait se faire de leur part. J'ai pas eu d'indication quand j'ai parlé à la ministre des Affaires étrangères qu'il y avait des mesures commerciales qui seraient mises en vigueur. Évidemment, ce sont des relations qui se sont améliorées depuis la dernière décennie et je pense que c'est dans notre intérêt commun de ne pas les endommager. Mais c'est clair qu'ils sont mécontents et ils ont une gamme de choix à faire dans les jours et les semaines à venir.
Votre homologue au Québec, Mme Fréchette, se réjouit de la décision d'aujourd'hui, mais dit que ça ne règle pas tout, continue de réclamer, entre autres, 1 milliard en compensation. Allez-vous verser 1 milliard?
C'est clair que ça ne règle pas tout, mais ce que j'ai dit très clairement à la ministre Fréchette, c'est que ce n'est pas quelque chose en ce qui a trait à la compensation possible du Québec qui se fait sur la place publique. J'ai dit qu'il y avait besoin de clarifier et de justifier ces sommes. C'est ce qu'on fait, c'est ce que nos fonctionnaires font. Je peux pas vous confirmer que je suis 100% d'accord avec elle, avec son raisonnement, mais on est à la table de négociation, on discute et nos fonctionnaires discutent.
And we'll go next to Taria Isri from Global News.
Hi, Minister. We know that asylum claims from Mexico have been growing rapidly since 2016. So why did you wait until the Quebec Premier asked you to reinstate this measure, and do you regret not doing it earlier?
Look, the premise of your question presumes that one person raised this to us. We've been examining these measures for months. We have seen exponential growth in asylum claims, particularly from Mexican nationals in the last year. This is something that Cabinet has been seized up for some months. Given the relationship that we have with Mexico, it is something that could not be taken precipitously. Measures had to be taken. Our officials at various levels have been going down to Mexico, speaking to officials, talking about the measures. The Prime Minister, every time he has met his counterpart, has raised this issue every time. And we needed to give Mexico, because of our friendship, the chance to rectify things. This clearly was not done in time, or the measures proposed are ones that couldn't have been put in place in time really to stem the flow. And so we had to take a decision. We also have a very important consideration with our relationship with Ontario, our relationship with the U.S., where we have seen a number of claimants cross from the northern part of the border into the southern, into the United States. I won't exaggerate those flows, but they are significant. They are nothing compared to what the U.S. is facing with respect to their southern border. In fact, they are probably rounding errors, but they are significant, and they've increased dramatically in the last year or two. And that's something we have to manage as a partner with the U.S. as well. So there's a number of considerations that go into the decision. It isn't one person clamoring that makes the difference. It is the process of work with our governments and inside government making those changes and deciding ultimately to institute this process of an ETA plus for Mexican nationals.
Outside of limiting the number of people who can come and apply, are you considering making changes to the asylum criteria itself?
No.
Okay. Emily Bergeron from La Presse Canadienne.
Monsieur le ministre, la ministre Fréchette, en réagissant hier, a dit notamment que c'est la preuve que Québec arrive à se faire entendre auprès d'Ottawa. À quel point les demandes de Québec et la lettre du premier ministre Legault ont contribué à la décision qui est annoncée aujourd'hui?
Vous voulez un pourcentage? C'est clair que la discussion avec nos partenaires, puis la province qui est, avec l'Ontario, la plus achalandée en termes de demandeurs d'asile, ça joue un rôle très important. Comme je l'ai dit à votre collègue, il y a plusieurs facteurs qui jouent en ligne de compte. Évidemment, notre relation avec Québec, relation avec l'Ontario. Le fait qu'on constate nous-mêmes qu'il y a des flux qui sont inacceptables, le taux d'acceptation à la Commission de l'immigration étant dans les 30-40 % comparé, par exemple, à la Colombie, où ça se situe dans les 80-90 % où les gens ont des gains de cause. On voit que les gens, les ressortissants mexicains, en grande partie, soit retirent leur application, partent ou n'ont pas de succès devant la Commission de l'immigration. Alors, ça joue en ligne de compte en prenant une telle décision. C'est un processus qui a pris des mois de délibération interne, de communication avec nos partenaires, que ce soit l'Ontario notamment ou le Québec. Et aussi notre relation avec les États-Unis. On sait que de plus en plus, il y a beaucoup de ressortissants qui viennent au Canada et ensuite qui se dirigent vers les États-Unis. C'est un flux qui est on peut dire, comparé au flux à la frontière américaine-mexicaine, une erreur d'arrondissement, mais quand même un flux significatif qui s'est accru de façon substantielle depuis la dernière année. Alors, il faut prendre ça en ligne de compte. Évidemment, ça cause une pression sur notre partenaire le plus important, c'est-à-dire les États-Unis. Alors, plusieurs facteurs qui jouent en ligne de compte. Évidemment, notre relation, qui est somme toute bonne avec le Québec, a aussi été un facteur.
Vous avez dit que les Mexicains sont mécontents, vous le reconnaissez. Quand vous leur avez parlé, est-ce que vous leur avez dit que la mesure était temporaire, permanente? Et si elle est temporaire, quels sont les critères que vous leur avez définis pour que la décision change?
Bon, on a une table avec eux au plus haut niveau pour s'assurer de l'intégrité de nos frontières et les mesures qui pourraient être mises en place au Mexique pour enrayer le flux de gens qui viennent ici. Évidemment, ça prend des mesures des deux côtés. Pour l'instant, c'est une discussion qui continue, qui évolue. Je ne vais pas dire que cette mesure est permanente. On pourrait la réviser, mais ça prendrait vraiment un déclin significatif. Puis des mesures au Mexique pour enrayer d'autres facteurs qui font en sorte que les gens viennent ici parfois de façon illicite. Alors, ça, on parle de faux passeports, on parle de pouvoir enrayer la criminalité. Ça, c'est des mesures additionnelles qui devront être prises en ligne de compte. C'est pas quelque chose que le Canada peut faire à lui seul. Ça prend un partenariat, notamment avec le Mexique et les États-Unis.
Thank you. We'll go to Marco Vigliotti from iPolitics.
Thank you, Minister. I mean, my colleagues have kind of asked versions of this question, but considering that Mexico is suggesting that they were kind of caught off guard by today's announcement, or that negotiations were ongoing and Canada's acting unilaterally, are you concerned about the impact of this decision on Canada's relationship with Mexico?
Absolutely have some concern. Unilaterally wouldn't be an entirely proper characterization of this. In my discussions with the foreign minister and the ambassador here, they recognize Canada's right, a sovereign right to take decisions, and I also recognize their sovereign right to take decisions with respect to Canada. We've had discussions at various levels throughout the last months. This is not something that is deployed in secret. You have to have officials going down and meeting with Mexican officials. You also have to have, because of the nature of this ETA, in recognizing U.S. visas, our systems talking with the American systems. These are discussions that don't and are not possible to be deployed overnight in the way a unilateral decision would be put into effect. We didn't have, for example, the visa processing capacity because we removed it once we removed the visa in 2016, so we have to redeploy and had to redeploy those. So this is not something that happens in secret. But clearly, the message was communicated to them with more intensity in the last few weeks, with the final confirmation coming over the last few days. There are multiple number of departments, federal departments involved in this decision making, and that's something that is just the nature of any important decision that's made by the government. But clearly, in the way the unilateral is usually defined, this I don't think falls in that category.
Thank you. You kind of mentioned earlier that the number of asylum claims that were rejected or abandoned by Mexican nationals kind of played a part in this decision. Looking at the numbers for 2023, it seems like most of the claims were rejected or withdrawn. But also many of them are, still outstanding, and obviously the government can't really dictate how long it takes the Immigration Refugee Board to handle these. But can you kind of walk me through the numbers that led you to this decision that most of these claims were not legitimate?
Well, indeed, the Immigration Refugee Board is something we should be very proud of because you have independent people taking a decision about the lives of people that are alleged to be fleeing violence and oppression, and it shouldn't be a political decision. It should be something that someone with a legal background in an institutional setting takes because you're playing with the lives of people ultimately, and you risk their lives in the case you make a mistake. So that's a process that we have to respect. It is a process that takes time, and it's gotten increasingly longer with the increase in volumes. Increase of illegitimate volumes and illegitimate claims that will or don't even have the prospect of succeeding does put a pressure on the system. It puts a pressure on the social supports that these people give and get rather by being simply on Canadian soil. So it has ripple effects across the system. I don't want to deny the right of someone to allege that they are fleeing violence and oppression. According to Canadian law, according to the Supreme Court, they are entitled to their day in court and due process. I think it's something Canadians should be very proud of. But again, when you see those numbers, you realize that we have a role in playing and adjusting the volume and the measures that we take on intake into Canada. And when you see percentages in that rate and that scale compared to the 6 to 20 down the list, you start scratching your head and saying increased volume, low success rate, there's a problem that has nothing to do with the IRB and an independent judicial process. And the government then has a right and in fact, a duty to take action.
Okay, we'll go next to Christian Noël from Radio-Canada.
Bonjour, Monsieur Miller. Madame Fréchette, ici aussi, hier, disait qu'elle aimerait qu'il y ait peut-être d'autres pays aient ce genre de visa de la part du gouvernement du Canada. Là, je regarde les critères que vous avez choisis, ou en tout cas que vous avez exprimés tout à l'heure. Vous parlez d'une importante hausse de la demande du Mexique et aussi l'important pourcentage de rejet. Est-ce que dans les pays qui font des demandes, de gens qui font des demandes d'asile présentement, est-ce qu'il y a d'autres pays présentement qui ont des données préoccupantes pour vous, sur lesquelles vous avez un œil et qui pourraient faire l'objet de mêmes mesures par rapport comme le Mexique?
C'est une question très pertinente, Christian. Puis dans ma réponse, il y a plusieurs éléments de complexité. La réponse, c'est oui. La difficulté, puis vous l'avez identifié implicitement, c'est que dans les pays qui font suite au Mexique, c'est-à-dire le Nigeria, Turquie, Colombie, l'Iran, l'Haïti, le Pakistan, l'Inde, le Bangladesh, les taux de réussite, mis à part quelques exceptions, sont très hauts. Et donc, ce sont des gens qui fuient la guerre, l'oppression et j'en passe. Donc, les ajustements qu'on ferait doivent être faits en conséquence sans préjudicier le droit des gens qui se retrouvent sur le sol canadien. Alors, les mesures ne seront pas aussi efficaces, évidemment, que celles qui est prise aujourd'hui. Et je pense que les gens doivent s'attendre au fait que ce n'est pas une décision qui va être facile pour les prochaines étapes et aussi facile que celle qu'on prend aujourd'hui. Même, en même temps, j'avoue que celle d'aujourd'hui n'était pas facile à prendre non plus. Mais il reste que, qu'on parle de l'Ouganda, de la Colombie, ce sont des taux de réussite qui sont très, très hauts quand même. Alors, c'est des gens qui, de droit, selon nos conventions internationales, devraient être ici, devraient être accueillis par le Canadien, puis les Canadiens s'attendent à ce qu'on fasse ça.
Mais donc, j'en comprends que visa pour le Mexique, c'est une étape, mais vous êtes en train d'étudier d'autres possibilités.
Oui, d'autres possibilités, mais là, les autres possibilités ne sont pas aussi faciles, de façon logistique que celle-ci.
Est-ce que c'est pas, excusez-moi, c'était juste une précision, mais est-ce que c'est pas une volte-face complète de la philosophie de l'immigration du gouvernement libéral?
Aucunement. Il y a eu ce narratif, je pense, nocif depuis le début de 2015 que c'était les portes grandes ouvertes sous le gouvernement Trudeau. C'est faux. On a toujours appuyé l'intégrité du système. C'est clair qu'en 2015, puis vous avez suivi l'élection de 2015 vous-même, il y avait un fonds de xénophobie du gouvernement Harper sur lequel jouait l'élection. Que ce soit le snitch line, que ce soit la réaction à la guerre en Syrie, que ce soit le visa sur le Mexique. Et donc, la philosophie du gouvernement Trudeau, c'était évidemment d'avoir une humanité, d'avoir une ouverture, mais ce n'était pas sans compromettre l'intégrité du système. Et pour les premières années, ça a été une réussite. Là, après la COVID, c'est clair que les chiffres ont augmenté de façon exponentielle et comme gouvernement, on se doit d'être raisonnable, de prendre des mesures. Et donc, ce n'est pas une question d'être dogmatique, c'est une question d'être raisonnable pour les Canadiens qui s'attendent à un gouvernement responsable de prendre des mesures qui reflètent la situation actuelle.
Right. And we'll go to Sarah Ritchie from Canadian Press.
Minister, can you just help us understand what you expect the impacts will be on the temporary agriculture worker program?
Again, another question with a lot of folds to it, but we have a challenge with temporary foreign work in this country in terms of volume, but we also recognize the fact that the agricultural programs are indispensable for whether it's fish processing, agricultural, people that are working, that come here and work hard as hell and then go home and feed their families. There is a value to that work. We don't expect that relationship with Mexico to change, and in fact, we are looking at possibilities to actually expand that. Clearly, there's work with industry that we got to do to make sure that this is done in a way that is manageable and sustainable, and maintains first and foremost the integrity of the workers that are coming to Canada and working under proper conditions. But we've spoken, and my colleague Melanie Joly spoke to her counterpart specifically on this point to make sure that we weren't compromising that important relationship, which we, frankly, if we do it the right way, and if no one reacts in an irrational way, there's a potential to expand that relationship.
Why does this change need to happen? You've talked about how this is, an ongoing problem for years. You've been considering possible changes for months. Why is it coming into effect within a matter of hours?
Well, this has not been, because of the decision-making process and the mechanical realities of having to put a system like this in place, it is not something that has necessarily been a tightly guarded secret. But because we want to make sure that people don't game the system, it has to come into effect quite quickly. And so in normal circumstances, you could probably do a press conference like this 2 weeks before an announcement and the effective date. But because of, let's be honest, the reality that bad actors can abuse the system and continue to do it, we have to have the shortest window of time between the announcement and the effective date, which is 11:30 tonight.
Thanks. We'll go to Hélène Buzetti.
Oui, bonjour, M. Miller. Vous me pardonnerez cette question très technique, mais je ne suis pas vraiment une experte dans la différence entre un visa et une autorisation de voyage électronique. Donc, j'aimerais juste que vous me clarifiez. Vous dites, bon, les gens qui ont eu un visa dans les 10 dernières années, mais il y a quand même 7 ans pendant lesquels il n'y a pas eu besoin de visa. Alors, comment vous allez gérer ça, là, ceux qui ont besoin d'en demander, puis pas, puis quand on se présente à la frontière, quelqu'un peut-il juste dire, ben moi, je n'avais pas de besoin de visa et donc passer? Juste clarifier ça pour moi.
On a 3 sites web que vous pourrez consulter en anglais, en français, en espagnol. Mais c'est clair. Puis ce qui est important de souligner, vu le fait qu'il n'y a pas eu de prérequis d'avoir un visa au Canada, on parle d'une différence de 2 ou 3 ans. Les gens qui avaient besoin d'avoir un visa jusqu'en 2016, eux pourront appliquer au processus simplifié d'ETA+, ainsi que les gens qui ont des visas en bonne et due forme avec les États-Unis. Et donc, c'est une panoplie de gens qui voyagent de façon assez régulière. Et donc, ce n'est pas ces gens-là, plus souvent que non, qui font des demandeurs d'asile, avec des exceptions. Donc, pour le reste, ce sont des gens qui vont aller à travers le processus normal, la biométrie, et le processus de visa qui s'impose à n'importe qui a besoin d'avoir un visa pour rentrer au Canada. Donc, il y a pour être très clair, les gens qui sont venus ici au Canada sans visa vont devoir avoir un visa complet, à moins qu'ils ont un visa avec les États-Unis durant les 10 dernières années.
Donc, ma follow-up est à 2 volets. Donc, est-ce que vous pouvez nous donner à peu près quel pourcentage du volume ça représenterait ceux qui ont besoin d'un visa? Et surtout, vous avez parlé de ceux qui partent, qui retournent vers les États-Unis. Vous avez dit c'est un nombre significatif. Vous avez dit, bien évidemment, c'est une marge d'erreur par rapport au volume à la frontière sud des États-Unis, mais avez-vous un ordre de grandeur à nous donner, s'il vous plaît?
Donc, pour la première question, on estime qu'à peu près 40% de gens qui vont vouloir voyager ici vont devoir avoir un visa et que les autres viennent ici de façon régulière, ont soit un visa américain ou un visa du Canada depuis le 2 ans avant 2015. C'est pas un chiffre exact, mais c'est le chiffre auquel on se fie. Et en ce qui a trait au volume de gens qui viennent ici puis ensuite se dirigent vers les États-Unis, il va falloir que je vous donne le chiffre le plus récent que j'ai, mais c'est un chiffre qui a grandi. C'est dans l'ordre de milliers de personnes durant la dernière année, mais c'était beaucoup plus moins l'année auparavant. Il va falloir que je regarde ça, mais on peut vous le donner, on peut faire une suivi avec vous. Mais en tout cas, la frontière américaine, c'est plusieurs milliers par jour. Donc, c'est pour ça que je disais, dans ce qui arrive au Canada, c'est ce qui arrive parfois durant une fin de semaine. Au côté Mexique, oui. On va vous le donner.
Thanks. Rafi Boudjikanian from CBC.
Morning, Minister. In your rationale for this, you mentioned people trying to cross into the U.S. from Canada without paperwork. I'm wondering, given that that is part of the issue here, are you working with public safety, with the CBSA, to strengthen that aspect of it so less of that happens?
Yeah, I mean, it's constant work with our American partners as well. They have noticed a spike. It is, as I mentioned in my introduction, it is in the grand scheme of things, rounding errors, but they're important numbers. And again, we don't need that becoming part of the political debate in the U.S. as they go into a politically charged season right now. Regardless of that fact, the numbers have jumped in the last year. And it's people that are sort of gaming the system by coming into Canada because they couldn't get into the U.S. and then transiting into America. And it isn't a large number, but it isn't something that should be done. And that includes work that has to be done with Homeland Security and CBSA.
Sorry, my follow-up sort of unrelated. About a week ago, you told me you were about to meet with Israel's ambassador about Gaza. I know that's since happened. Canadians are still trying to get their family out of there. What's going on to help them further?
We keep pushing. I met the ambassador. It was a polite conversation. I don't think we agreed to disagree on a number of points. These are not, look, people are dying in Gaza, so you can't expect these meetings to be full of pleasantries. It was a frustrating meeting on many levels. Obviously, understand where they're coming from, reacting to a devastating terrorist attack. But again, I made the point that we're trying to save lives, and these are family members of Canadians, of permanent residents. We have pushed on many levels. The Prime Minister himself has pushed. We're expecting results, but I haven't seen any. Right? What we've gotten, that's not true. We've gotten people out on an ad hoc basis, or people have actually been able to get through the border. I suspect at great financial cost. And those people that have codes or people that have relationships to Canada, we're willing to process. But when I put forth this program, it wasn't on the basis that I would simply issue visas and say, guys, take care of yourself and try to get out as best as possible, and God bless you. I undertook with my cabinet colleagues to help push the local authorities, including Israel and Egypt, to make sure that we could facilitate their transition into Cairo and then complete biometrics and then to Canada so that they can be in safety. So it's very frustrating to me. I don't want to put together a program that is failing, but we are all failing Gazans at this point, and I think that is something that we need to realize. They are under, it's probably the largest hostage taking right now in the world, and it is something that if Canada can play a small role in it, we can't be everything to everyone, but if Canada can play a role in this, in getting people out and safe, we're willing to play it. But right now, we haven't had the success that we wanted to, and that means that people are in and around Rafah are very exposed to death, to starvation, to bombardment, and it won't prevent us from pushing, but we're continuing.
I would just like to remind people who are online to raise their hand if they have any questions, and we'll move to Sandrine Vieira. No? Okay. Pascal? Okay.
Oui, bonjour. On a beaucoup entendu le gouvernement du Québec, M. Legault, là-dessus, sur cette demande-là. Mais dans une des réponses à ma collègue, vous avez parlé de l'Ontario. Je me demandais si tu avais senti la pression de la part du gouvernement Ford pour mettre un frein à l'afflux des demandeurs d'asile dans la province.
Ça a été moins public. Je sais que vous riez, là, mais ça a été bien moins public, mais c'est pas un secret des sorties de la maire Chao et les discussions que nous avons tous comme gouvernement avec des ministres de l'Ontario. Je reste aussi, ce qui arrive en Ontario, il y a un effet, il y a l'effet de gens qui s'en viennent à Pearson, mais aussi le fait que les gens se présentent à l'aéroport Trudeau, puis pour une raison ou une autre, se dirigent vers l'Ontario. C'est pas quelque chose qui est étudié plus que le chiffre de gens qui arrivent à l'aéroport et qui ensuite s'installent soit en Ontario, soit au Québec, mais la réalité, c'est que l'Ontario fait face à une migration secondaire qui vient principalement du Québec. Les gens viennent rejoindre leur famille ou ne parlent pas français ou ne veulent pas rester pour une raison ou une autre. Et les Mexicains font partie de ce groupe-là. Et donc, ces mesures sont des mesures qui vont affecter l'Ontario. Mais ce n'est pas des doléances ou des demandes qui ont fait de façon aussi publique que le Québec.
Juste en follow-up, ils ont fait des demandes à vous privées. Là. Ils trouvaient qu'il y avait trop de monde.
Oui.
Okay. Puis ça, c'est M. Piccini, j'imagine, votre homologue?
Le gouvernement Ford, en général, j'ai parlé à mon homologue, M. Piccini, il y a 2 jours. Et évidemment, tout ce qu'on entend avec de la mairesse Chao en particulier, mais des autres maires de grandes villes, le maire Brown, je vous dirais qu'ils ne ciblaient pas une population en particulier, mais c'est clair que ce qu'ils voient, puis l'augmentation de volume, c'est quelque chose qui arrive en Ontario, surtout à Toronto, puis les arrondissements environnants.
Okay. Thanks, Minister. We'll go to a few questions on the Zoom line. Since we have some time, we'll start with Judy Trin from CTV.
Good morning, Minister. Can you clarify a question I have in regards to these visas? Is the number of Mexicans that are basically being rejected and coming into Canada, What kind of impact is that having on our housing situation?
You know, it is unhealthy to link housing to the volume of people that are coming here to seek refuge and asylum. Equally unhealthy to relate it to immigrants. The price of houses has jumped as a result of interest rates, and affordability has jumped as a result of that. That isn't because of volumes that we are seeing. At the same time, and these are two truths that can be the case at the same time, it's no surprise that people that are here temporarily, as economists measure, do put pressure on what they call the cost of shelter. This is more of a humanitarian challenge because the type of shelter that we would deploy as a responsible country to welcome these people is something that doesn't look like the house I live in. And you can have a bunch of opinions on that, but affordability has struck everyone everywhere, and that is something that is undeniable. And so this is really about the ability by responsible governments, municipal, federal, and provincial, to house people that are more often than not in desperate situations, and take desperate measures to do very basic things like get shelter over their head. So yes, there is pressure. It is specific to one area, affordable, low-income housing, designed housing for people that are here on a temporary basis. But again, sometimes we're mixing, I think, apples and oranges. A proof point of that is that you have occupation rates in smaller towns that have never benefited from immigration, where affordability is a huge challenge. This isn't about downtown Montreal or downtown Toronto. Affordability has struck every single part of the country, and that is not something that asylum seekers have created, nor should they be held responsible for.
Fair, but it's having an impact on our shelter system. My follow-up question is, can you provide some numbers? You said that the numbers are significant of Mexicans seeking, doing illegal crossings into the U.S., that it's a pressure point. What are those numbers, and what is the jump?
Multiple times, Judy, in the last few, if you compare year over year, as I mentioned to Hélène, our team will get you those numbers to the extent they're available. But again, they are probably the yearly equivalent of a 3-4 day flow on the Mexican-U.S. border. So not insignificant, but they are ones that we need to manage as part of our relationship with the U.S. And the fact that people are moving in irregular fashion isn't something that should be done.
And I apologize, but if I may just follow up on Rafi's question in regards to Gaza. You said that you are aware of Canadians getting their family members out of Gaza on their own at great cost. So you're aware of Canadians going over and bribing officials. Is that what you're referring to? And is that we have numbers from your department, which said that in the last 2 weeks or so, they know of at least 12 individuals who have crossed over without any consular help from Canada. Are those individuals crossing over as taking matters into their own hands and bribing officials? Is that what's happening?
I can't speak to every person that's crossed over, Judy. I'd add as well that there are some consular and diplomatic cases that we've been able to advocate for and get out, as well as certain individuals with significant medical conditions. But other than that, we haven't been successful in getting our lists of people out, which is now a couple hundred. I can't confirm whether every person that is crossed has bribed officials, but I do understand that in order to cross the border on your own, there are sums required.
And Minister, we just have one last question on Zoom for Stuart Benson from the Hill Times, if he's still there.
Hi, Minister. Just one final follow on the Gaza thing. I just wanted to follow up on where are you on the cap, just considering how much difficulty there's been on getting people out, and just where are you on the cap? I know you said you've been flexible, so has there been more thought on whether or not that cap should be removed?
There has been more thought on it, Stuart. face sort of a competing challenge, is whether to continue to parade around a program that I believe will be life-saving when I know that it might entertain false hope. At the same time, I think, and we are having talks, I've said time and time again that I'm prepared to be flexible, but I'd like to see movement before, and any form of success before we start telling other people that there may be some hope, because right now hope is pretty slim. I do think we have to maintain it, but it's pretty slim given current circumstances. Again, when we see the situation evolve, we'll be prepared to move, and I certainly ask my officials to be more flexible in reviewing the program and to issue more codes.
Do you have a follow-up, Stuart?
And just I guess, are there any of those people that you said have made it across the border, are there any applications you know of that are on, I guess, the home stretch, as it were, to move towards coming to Canada, that have gotten their biometrics done and are moving towards that part of the process?
We have gotten some people here since January, I believe. I'd have to recall the date, but again, it's a trickle, and the ones that we get through RAFA crossing, with short of doing the biometrics and the final stages, are at a complete stage where we feel comfortable about that process. And so once you get on the list, that is a very important first step. And then getting to Cairo and completing those biometrics is the next step. I can't tell you that we've gotten any people here in any significant amounts other than the consular, diplomatic, and a couple ad hoc cases in the last couple months. This is something that's generalized as well. Canada is, while this program is unique, there's no other country, to my knowledge, that is actually doing this in a comprehensive way. There's about 6 or 7 other countries that are interested in doing it, but they're facing the same roadblocks.
Okay. Thanks, Minister. Those were all the questions that we had, either in the room or online. So I appreciate your time and everybody's time today.
Thanks.
Yeah.